So I'm going to clean up my palette a little bit, and then again, I'm going to keep my Gamsol at this layer because I still think of this as an underpainting layer, even though I'm starting to use a little bit more paint, adding white to it. Okay, so the first one I'm going to go ahead and mix up is my 9, and I'm just going to get a little bit of my black paint, a little bit of white paint, and I'm going to start mixing those together. I already know that this is too light. I added too much white, so I'm going to add a little bit more dark. I try to get it by my eye first because that helps me get better at values. If I can look at it and say, I think this is right, before I test it on my value card, it helps tune my eye. This is looking closer. It might still be a little light, but I'll go ahead and test it so you guys can see. What I do is I dip my finger in the paint and I apply it right to my scale. Oh, look at that. It looks right. If I put it on the value, I like to test it on the value next to it too. So you can see how when you squint and you look at the 9, the edges completely blend in, whereas when you look at the 8, you can see the edges of the paint. So this is a pretty spot on a value 9. I'm gonna put paint up on the canvas as I go. This is a size 8 flat, and it's a Hog's Bristle brush. I am going to, and because I am early in my process, I'm still going to be using my Gamsol. So I just dip a little bit of Gamsol just to thin it out. I don't want a lot of paint, nor do I want a lot of Gamsol. I don't want the paint to be, I don't want it to be too slick. But I also don't want it to be too thick or pasty. So it's kind of like this delicate balance. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on my darkest shadow shape. There's only one, so I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to lay it down really thin too. And I'm going to go ahead and cover up this thing that I considered a detail earlier because it's just a detail. That little mark on the handle. I'm just kind of like, it's like painting by number. I'm just filling in the shape that I initially created. For myself. So that's the first one. Still want to go work in extremes because I could just go up to the next value level, but I want to make sure that this whole hierarchy is working. And as we found, it's easier to find the middles and get the middles working once you have your extremes. So now I'm going to mix my lightest shadow at the value 6. So I'm going to take some dark paint, some white paint. That's too light. I need to add some more dark. Still feels a little too light, but yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit more dark in there. Okay, so let's see. This is a value 6. You squint and look at it. It is a little bit darker than a 6. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more because it does still seem a little bit too dark. Let me try again. There we go. I keep saying that, but this time I think it's that bottom one. That's right. See how the paint right there is blending in pretty well. That's a value 6. I'm going to go ahead and put this paint on the canvas for my lightest shadows. I'm going to clean my brush actually as well so that I get that dark paint out. And I don't darken that level 6 paint with my level 9 paint. And after I do that, I make sure to get all of that stuff out of my brush. Again, thinning it down a little bit with some Gamsol. Make sure I'm getting it all over my brush. Now, lightest shadow. That was just this part down here. I'm going to fill it in. And now I want to look over there and see, I want to look over at my subject and I want to see if the difference in value from here to here feels like the same as what I'm seeing over there. So I'm going to look between the two places. Yeah, it feels pretty good, actually. I think it's nice. I'm also going to look at it in my mirror. I think it's good. So this paint went on a little bit. It's kind of like wet. So I'm going to wipe it out a little bit, which I like to do a lot in this layer, is try to keep my paint thin, and I will just smudge it. All right, so that was my only darkest shadow. So now I've got these middle shadows to do. So next I'm going to mix my value 7. I'm going to in between these two. I think I'll brush mix it because I like brush mixing when I have some good colors already down. So I've got both of these here. Can push them together. I'm aiming for a value 7. And I can test it. Put it directly on there. It's got to be darker than the 6, lighter than the 8. And this feels like it could go a little bit darker, just a little bit. That feels good. At a value 7. So now I don't have a ton of paint down here. Probably gonna make some more. I do. I can make some more. That's close enough. And I'm going to just fill this in everywhere I see middle shadow. And before I even go too far, I want to compare. I want to look over there and I want to compare these two and these two and see, does that feel right? And that feels good. So now let me put some middle shadow here and see how that feels. I look over there and I compare. So this feels lighter to me than that, and it should be darker than this, and it is. It feels darker. I've been saying that I think that this guy is going to need to go a little bit darker, and I think when this goes a little bit darker, it's going to make this feel a little bit lighter. So I think I'm good with it because the form it's working. That looks good. Let me finish filling this guy in. I'm going to fill in the whole shape. Is there any other middle shadow? This is also a middle shadow. So how does this feel relative to everything? Good. Feels good. It reads as, this is the difference in value from here to here is starting to tell me that this object is different in value overall than this object. And that's true. This is a white book. This is a black cup. This is the white book in shadow. This is the black cup in shadow. And I'm getting that sense because the relationship between these values is accurate, it's working. All right, so I got all of my middle shadows. Now I'm moving into the light. And I would recommend, I brush mixed. I don't think it's a bad idea to just go ahead and mix each of these values. it's quicker. So if you have all of like nice big piles of all of these values would be really ideal. I'm gonna go to my lightest light. I'm gonna mix a value 1. It's just gonna take a little bit of paint, a little bit of dark paint mixed with my white, because this is gonna be my lightest value in the whole painting. All right, so let me test this level 1 paint. Ooh, it's still a little bit too dark. It's a level 2, so let me add some more white. Still a little too dark. Add a little bit more white. I feel like this happens every single time I mix value 1 paint. I put too much dark, and then I'm pushing more white, more white, more white to try to lighten it. Okay, value 1 mixed. All right, let me go ahead and put this paint up on my canvas. And as you can see, I'm lining these up in order, value order. Make sure your brush is clean before you start fooling with this really light value paint. Okay, so my lightest light is here. It's this whole shape. So now I'm going over my drawing, and that's okay. If I get it right, then my eyes fill in the gaps. All right, lightest light also happens here. Bird. It's okay if you go outside the lines. It's actually a good thing. Wherever you go outside the lines, you can come back with your negative space and fix it. So those were my 2 lightest lights. The paint here got a little bit thick in a way that I don't really love. And you scrape some of it off just to keep it from being too wet. I'm gonna do the same thing up here. You really do want to do this scraping. I do this all the time. This means you're taking care of your canvas as you're going, and you're setting your future self up for success. Okay, so now I'm moving on. I did my lightest light. I need to do my darkest light, which is this and this. And we set a value 6. That's looking pretty good. Well, let me get it right up next to this and see what happens. Let these 2 edges meet. Does that feel like the right relationship? The 6 might be a little bit too dark, but it works. That's what I'm aiming for, is I want it to work. And I want it to work across all of the different values. So that was my darkest light. So I now need to work this guy and see how that feels. This paper is going to be tricky. And I didn't include, the paper has some shadow happening, but that's more detail than anything. So I didn't include it. But I will include it when I'm painting in my next layer. And that's going to make, it's really going to make that paper come to life as paper. Okay, how's that feeling? It's not laying down back here yet. I'm letting this be a lost edge. Make sure I have my angles right. My darkest light, it's the same value as my lightest shadow, which is this. When I look over there and I compare this to this is darker than this, most definitely. And this is also darker than this. This may benefit from going lighter as I move forward, or this might need to go darker, which I think this is darker than this. So you see how there's like it's almost like value relationship gymnastics that you have to do to make these shapes work together. And as I look and I examine how it's feeling right now, I don't think it is a problem. It feels like it's working well enough that I can move forward. My last part is going to be, oh wait, I forgot the head. I need to do that. Okay. My middle light, I said, was a value 3. I'll take some of this paint here. And I'm going to mix it in here. Add some of this to it. Try to get a value 3. Okay. And it is quite perfectly a value 3. I'm going to paint this everywhere I see middle light. And I'm going to also carve out my edges around my bird. You use a negative space to get more information down. So I'm going around the whole thing, and I want to fill in that big value shape everywhere on the canvas. So I'm getting my paint down. It's really thin. All right, so now I have filled in all of the shapes on here. Every inch of the canvas is covered. I'm gonna go and just do a few refinements. So right in here, my negative space, I kind of came back in. That is often the way I will work out my edges, push in and out, and go between shapes of different colors and values. And so now I'm gonna come back around with my lighter paint and just redefine some information here about this bird and this edge. Because I'm still in this early phase of painting, I don't need it to be perfect. I'm not trying to get perfect details, but I do want the shapes to read somewhat accurately. When I turn around and look in the mirror, I want the space and the objects to come together and make sense. There's one main thing that's bothering me right now, and it's this little shape in here, in this edge. This is not reading quite yet as a book sitting on the table. And I think I'm gonna push a little bit more information. This was the lightest light, and I'm gonna let that come a little bit further. And that is helping. So now I'm adjusting. I just made a decision. I'm gonna let my book be the lightest and the table be a step darker in value across the whole thing. Okay, so now I'm gonna go darker. Trying to get, I ran out of paint for the value 3, but I'll just brush mix in between. Does this feel right? So now I'm gonna get some value 3 paint here to give that book the feeling that it's different. And that's feeling better. I'm gonna correct the drawing a little bit more. And clean up some edges. I'm always cleaning up edges, I feel like. I'm still just kind of adjusting some of these shapes. Okay, so now's the point where I might do a little bit more scraping and wiping out. I like to do this in my negative space. So I'm just scraping any excess paint off of the canvas to give myself room to apply thick paint, but not deal with my canvas being too wet. And sometimes I even like the texture that it creates. And I mean, I'm doing it in like all the areas right now, but I don't need to. Sometimes if I like something, I leave it. I know I'm going to bring some of this stuff lighter, and I know I'm going to make this guy a little bit darker as I move forward. And if there are any other compositional things or lines that I need to reestablish, I know that there is something happening right there. I might go back in and reestablish some edges. But anyway, this is pretty much complete for this second layer, my big shape layer. If you are new to values, I recommend stopping here and doing this 10 times with 10 different setups before you move on. Being able to look at a composition and simplify it into a series of really simple value shapes, big shapes that relate accurately to each other is very challenging. And the next step is a lot easier if you get that right. So I want you to work on that a lot before you move on.